It's Groundhog Day all across America. You're waking up. You woke up today to another Groundhog Day. I mean, think about it. Coronavirus, COVID-19. It's like redo. Everything's shutting down again. 3 months ago, day after day, we went through this. People were like, oh, we're out of it. Nope. Next day, same thing. It's literally people are like, I'm having a hallucination. Yesterday is today. Tomorrow is yesterday. The 4th of July is just another day because there is no 4th of July. And it's not just COVID. I mean, cancel culture. Wake up to the same story. CNN, you wake up to the same news every day. The same stories, repeated, rehashed. Even Russia has come back. If you even bother to watch the news, you've seen that Russia's back in the news because Trump maybe knew or didn't know, but Putin maybe put a bounty on U.S. fighters, soldiers from the Taliban in Afghanistan. It's Groundhog Day all over again, except in the movie Groundhog Day, Bill Murray actually learned something. Are we learning anything? I'm Rob Nelson. It's Rob Nelson Live.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. My name's Rob Nelson. I used to have a talk show on Fox, a show on Fox News, but news in America is so produced. I don't care if you think it's left, right, center, fake.
You passed tougher legislation to deal with the paparazzi after what happened with you and your family.
I think it's very important that we focus on rebuilding.
Hey, everybody, I'm Rob Nelson. Welcome to Rob Nelson Live, our open mic roundtable day where you can get in, want to have people calling in, want to have people texting in, just kind of create a conversation. And again, I started out saying it's Groundhog Day, so I'm going to try not to have this be Groundhog Day because to talk about the same things over and over again. And it's hard because the same things keep happening over and over again. So it's hard not to talk about them when they keep happening, right? So let's start with COVID. Okay. It's back, right? I mean, it was never gone, but I think somewhere inside, a lot of us thought, I did my 3 months time. I paid the price. Now I can go back to work. Now I can go back to sort of a version of my life. I mean, I know it's not going to be exactly the same. I'm going to wear a mask everywhere I go, and I'm going to social distance, but hey, I can kind of go back to my life. No. I mean, you started, and now, like I'm in California. If you're in California, for example, we're now just stepping backwards, right? They opened bars for about a week. Well, you knew that was going to end fast. They closed bars a week later. Then they decided we're closing beaches for the 4th of July and bike paths and a lot of trails. And now they're closing dining and restaurants. And people are like, wait. We just started. Yep. We're going backwards. Why are we going backwards? Well, it's pretty simple. I don't like to be the guy who's like, I told you so. So maybe I just did that. So shame on me. But I said it at the beginning. What were they thinking? You quarantine the bulk of a nation with a easily transmissible disease, and then you let them all out and the disease is still there. It doesn't matter if you quarantine them for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. When you let people back out and there's no vaccine, people are going to start getting sick. The disease didn't get any less transmittable. I mean, maybe a little bit. The summer weather knocks it down a little, fresh air, be outside. But basically, you've taken a completely uninfected population, put them all out, even with social distancing, the disease is going to spread. They had to know that. The medical experts, the epidemiologists, the Faucis, the Dr. Bricks, the president, the Democratic governors, everybody had to know that when they lifted the restrictions, people were going to start getting sick again, right? And they sort of said, well, yeah, but we want to make sure we don't overcrowd our hospitals. So we wanted to have capacity, make sure we could handle that. Okay. But you're still going to have that problem now with hospitalizations going up. You're going to have the problem, more people infecting more people. It's inevitable. People keep saying herd immunity. And if you don't know what that is, herd immunity is when enough people have it that it's sort of there, get kind of an immunity to it. Plus, when people have it, they develop antibodies. So when they transmit it, some of those antibodies get developed. So there's a sort of a layering effect where the more people that get it and survive, the better it gets, even for the people who are going to get it, who are more vulnerable. We don't get herd immunity if you don't allow people to get exposed. So again, my point, it was always going to be this. It was always going to be, we're going to have to face the fact that the number of warnings are, you could see 100,000 new cases a day. This is terrible. It's unacceptable. It's all, and people are, as if people weren't panicked enough. People are panicking. Let me tell you a quick story. I was at the gym today. Well, you, yes, can still go to the gym in LA, and it's kind of great. You're socially distanced. Everybody's wearing masks. It's not like your normal gym experience, right? I mean, there's separation on all the machines. Every other thing is closed, and they limit capacity, but it's actually relatively good. I mean, it's way less crowded than a grocery store. Trust me, I ain't dodging around people all the time like I'm in the grocery store. I got plenty of space. I got my mask on, and I look up, and there's an old episode of Jerry Springer. And, it's just as bad as Jerry Springer could get. It's like a white trash woman and her white trash husband, and he cheated on her with the neighbor who's her best friend, and she babysits the neighbor's kids. And, the neighbors are there and they come on, and it's like, it's a white trash fest. Now, you notice you can say white trash still. That's not a racist comment, but anyway. But it's classic Jerry Springer, as ugly and kind of beat down as you can get. Why she did it, why he did it, the name calling, that you're a lazy drunk, you never do anything, I do all the work, you babysit my kids, and you're having, I babysit your kids and you're having sex with my husband. Well, it's like all messed up. And then he goes to the audience and their nasty comments about the people, but also about the audience. Some lady makes a comment about a woman in front's hair, and the woman in front is a black woman, and she says like a mugrat of your hair or whatever. I'm like, you could never do that now. And here's the thing. I'm watching that going, wow, remember the good old days? Remember the good old days? And I don't mean the good old days because you could say offensive things. I'm like, the good old days when, like, that Jerry Springer story almost seemed like a reprieve. Because we're in way worse times than the two white trash couples fighting about, and again, who even knows if it's true with Jerry Springer, right? Half of them were actors. But either way, it reflects something that went on with this horrible kind of relationship, messed up dynamic. It was like, wow. That almost seems nice compared to what we have now. Because now what we have is this vicious, hostile, brutal divide over ideas. You can't even have different ideas than other people. I mean, we're like at a cultural, social, class, race, war breaking point. And it is depressing. And you're wearing face masks the whole time. And I'm not knocking face masks. Don't get me wrong. I wear my face mask. And I had this whole thing about tired of people who can't put a face mask on when they go into a store or whatever. Just do it. It isn't that hard. Even if it's just common human courtesy to other people, just do it. But they're extreme at the same time. I see people, everyone's covered up, walking down the street, crossing 2 blocks over with their face mask. And I see people driving with their face masks on. I'm like, what do you exactly think you're accomplishing in your car wearing your face mask? Really? Like, are you keeping yourself safe from yourself? But we've reached a point, a conflict, and it's understandable because nobody trusts the information anymore that's coming from anything but the side that they believe is most accurately about them, right? So I can understand why a whole lot of people right now are angry. And get ready, folks. There is a lot, everybody, much more anger coming. You thought it was bad now. People are boiling over. They're angry, they're mad, they're depressed, and they're scared. And it's understandable. They don't know what's next. They hunkered down. Everybody hunkered down for 3 months. And now it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me to hunker down again? And wait, you were going to help me out. But the government didn't help most people out, helped a few people out. Yeah, I mean, some people are getting unemployment, but think how many people it didn't help out. How many people couldn't get the payroll protection loans? How many people's businesses were going under? How many people's jobs are not coming back? How many people's retirement funds are gone? I mean, millions of lives have been wrecked. And here's what this means for me. When people, and this is where the media coverage comes in, when the media keeps depicting it's like, gotcha, told you so, told you. All you crazies who wanted to reopen your economies, look what happened. See, we told you. You can just see it. It seeps through CBS, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. Everybody but Fox. And I'm not defending Fox. It's got its own agenda. But I'm saying it just seeps through states who wanted to reopen now are paying the price. And I just want to say to every one of those reporters, every one of those writers, every one of those networks, seriously, you have a job. You have the luxury of a job where you are largely often misrepresenting or promoting your own narrative, drilling up fear, making money. Millions of people didn't rush back to their lives because they were short-sighted, because they were selfish, because they were petty. They wanted to get back to their lives because they needed to live. They needed to pay bills. I didn't notice where in the fine print I missed, your rent is being forgiven for the next 12 months. Don't worry about paying it back. Your mortgage, forget about it for 6 months. No, we won't even ask you to repay it. Oh, that rent on your property, on your building you're leasing for your business, let it go. No, the banks aren't backing down. Nobody's giving you a break. So people are like, I got to get back to work. I got to get back to my life. I can't do this. So it's very frustrating when the media depicts it like, see these people who wanted to rush back to reopen, especially go back to my point a couple minutes ago. It doesn't matter if you reopen in 3 months from now or 4 months from now. If you've kept the population protected, you're going to expose them. Unless you want to keep it locked down till there's a vaccine sometime next year. Let's see how the economy looks then. And by the way, polls show that like 30 to 40% of people say they won't even take the vaccine because they think they'd be better off getting sick. So it's a real farce when the media depicts it as like they're people rushing back. And you'll notice like in California, the bars open for literally like 5 days, 6 days. And as soon as they closed, the media coverage was see bars open and people started getting sick. Instant corona sickness. Did they leave out the part where the 2.5, 3 weeks before thousands of people were protesting in the streets? Oh, they mentioned that. That might have had something to do with it. I see. So all the people who went to bars for 4 days and had a drink, they caused a massive outbreak. The thousands of people who protested for days packed together in streets, police officers, all like a mashup of humanity and all went back to their things, they might have contributed a teeny bit, but not much. But the Trump rally, that probably did. Oh, and let's not forget Memorial Day weekend when they went to the beaches. That started it, the pandemic all over again. If I sound cynical, it's because I am, but I'm also annoyed at it because it's that double standard. It's that hypocrisy. I'm not saying the protesters shouldn't have protested, but if you're going to say it's okay for them to go protest, then acknowledge that you are saying it's okay to put the millions of lives at risk that will cause a surge in the pandemic, because we are having thousands and thousands and thousands of people gathering closely together and then going back to their respective places. You're going to spread the disease that you said is so deadly we can't spread it. Or if you're okay with that, then stop punishing people for wanting to go to the beach. Stop saying you can't go out. Stop saying you can't go to a bar. Then let us go back to our lives. Why won't the government, for the most part, in most states, let people do that? And why does the media continue to criticize governors like in Florida? And again, I'm not taking a side here. I'm just saying who say, hey, we're not, we're going to keep moving forward. There's no more balance in it. And it makes people so cynical and so hypocritical. Okay, so the second part of this is the sort of the hypocrisy that carries through to other things around culture. And, the whole monument thing, the tearing down the monuments, the tearing down the statues, the renaming everything, and of course, anything cultural, blackface being right up there. If you've followed the news lately, which many of you don't, Jimmy Kimmel got busted for doing blackface and came out earlier. He did a Karl Malone blackface, and then he did the N-word in a spoof of Snoop, and he did another blackface, and he finally apologized and said, I'm sorry, but I didn't want to give, fuel to the people who would attack my views that are anti-Trump or whatever. I didn't quite get the logic of that, but Jimmy Kimmel did blackface. Joy Behar did blackface. I've made a list of all the liberals. Sarah Silverman did blackface. All the liberal comedians and performers who did blackface. Megyn Kelly asked if it was okay for people to do what they had done in the past last year, and she got fired. None of the prominent liberals who did it got fired. So we did a little poll, and I did a little man on the street thing about blackface. So want to know your thoughts on, and I'm not saying blackface is okay. I'm talking about the double standard, that if a liberal does blackface, and they did it particularly, say they were trying to impersonate someone or be that person, and they say, I probably shouldn't have done it, I'm sorry, that's okay. But if a conservative even mentions, is it okay, they should be canceled. So is it blackface that is so terrible always? I'm not saying it can't be, I'm saying always, the question Megyn Kelly got canceled for, or is it just one more tool in the cultural war? Let's take a look at my little man on the street with blackface. Are you guys familiar with the term blackface?
Yes.
Okay. As a black woman, what do you think when you hear someone did blackface?
I really don't care.
Are you not offended?
No.
Do you think they're racist?
No.
What's your thought when you hear some white person did that?
It's definitely completely wrong.
Like, you shouldn't dress up like a skin color.
I just think they're a little bit lost. They really don't understand.
So would you say it's racist?
Yeah, I think they're racist.
I think it's more they're uninformed.
I can't think of a situation where it's appropriate.
I don't think Megyn Kelly, who talked about it and then got fired.
I don't think they should have fired her for just asking the question.
Like, if you don't know it's wrong and you still do it, how responsible are you for it?
She didn't know.
Are we overly defensive about everything right now?
Yes, we are. You can't say anything. You can't do anything.
The trend we're in where someone says or does something and then they're silenced, fired, removed.
Everything you did 100 years ago is coming back. What
Right.
is the world coming to?
Do you think it would help if we talked about it more instead of just being like, you're fired?
Yeah.
People do need to talk about it.
It would. It would help.
I think we need to talk about all this
I
stuff.
think we should talk about it, more conversation.
You need to have dialogue. You need to talk about it.
The knee-jerk reactions that you get from people and the automatic judging.
And give the person a chance.
Whereas like in context, you can kind of see where those opinions are formed.
Wouldn't it ultimately be the way we can change people is by forcing the conversation up rather than
Yes.
suppressing it?
Right. You should talk about it.
And that is my point. And not that, interestingly, like the white people are like, it's racist. The black people I'm talking to are like, it's just misguided. And there's plenty of black people who would say it's racist, and there's white people who would say it's misguided. Point is, we've turned this into a pun intended, black and white issue, and you can only have certain views. You can't have conversation anymore. The whole point of dialogue, even dialogue that's difficult or offensive, is to challenge the way people think. When you say you can't even talk about things, you can't even bring it up. We're now in a point where you did it, don't say it. If you said it, take it back, apologize, vow to be re-educated, apologize for being so stupid to have said it in the first place. That doesn't get us anywhere. That's Groundhog Day over and over and over, and it's no progress. So when we get to the taking down the statues and the monuments and all that, okay, I don't care. I don't need to have Confederate soldier statues up. And then people who are standing around them, I'm going to protect them at all costs. It's like, really? Do you not have a better thing to do? Who cares? But people who are bent on taking them down, exactly what's your goal? And where do you draw the line? Because now, Princeton's changed the Woodrow Wilson School of Public Policy. It's no longer the Woodrow Wilson School. Woodrow Wilson was a president during World War I. And he had somewhat of a racist past in many respects. He also helped found what became the United Nations. He did a lot of good things, but he had racist views. People are saying we should take Abraham Lincoln's statue down. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. Newsflash. If you want to take down anybody who's been a public leader, who's had a history of some kind of racism, if you're not white, so whether it's to blacks, to people of color, to Asians, to minorities in general, just take them all down. Everybody. Take all the names off the schools and streets named John F. Kennedy, because John F. Kennedy was a racist. And people go, no, yes, he was. His brother Bobby and his Sergeant Shriver, his brother-in-law, they got him to take civil rights actions. Now, maybe he grew, but he was a racist. Look at the things he said. Lyndon Johnson was a racist. Franklin Roosevelt interned American Japanese people, locked them in basically like non-labor concentration camps. He was anti-Semitic. Every single leader, Washington, Jefferson, maybe Adams, the founding fathers, gets a pass. All of them had racist tendencies, past beliefs. Lincoln said he would have kept slavery if it would have kept the Union together. It wasn't for slavery, but it's like, I'd let it go to keep the Union together. They were all racists by our standards today. So tear them all down. But maybe tearing it all down isn't the point. And it's not, we need to learn. I'm tired of we need to learn from history. We'll learn from history, one way or the other. But what are we accomplishing? Robert Johnson, the founder of BET, Black Entertainment Network, and the first black billionaire, had a lot of comments on this in the last 2 weeks. And he basically was like, you know what? Stop doing it. What are you doing? A bunch of rioters tearing stuff down. Who cares? It's not accomplishing anything. I don't need all you white people apologizing. Now, before you jump up and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe Robert Johnson's just, anti-black himself. Robert Johnson isn't anti-black. Robert Johnson is saying, I don't need all you white liberals assuaging your guilt by apologizing. Your apologies are meaningless. How are your apologies? How is tearing down your monuments going to change the economic inequalities that exist between blacks and whites? And if you think Robert Johnson is a sellout, you just look at what Robert Johnson actually wants to do. He's like closer to Malcolm X. He wants the Black Lives Matter to be a political party. He wants reparations for slavery. He's not saying, I don't think white people have screwed black people over. He's saying, I don't need all you white people apologizing, tearing down monuments and running around putting black squares on your Instagram and feeling good. If you want to change something, then change it. Otherwise, shut up. That's my monologue. Let's get guests in here. And Bruce, I know Bruce today. Bruce, we got the nice Bruce here, but Bruce, before the show, you had some thoughts that were percolating out. So I want you just to share them a little bit, because I know they had to do with Robert Johnson. You were a little wound up about something. So it's wound up day. What are you wound up about?
I was kind of blown away by hearing how Robert Johnson was almost saying he found it kind of funny how white folks were acting and how they should, everyone was promoting you should donate to Black Lives Matter. And yet a lot of people didn't understand it's associated to a political party. And so a lot of other people who were in the black community were saying, hey, if you want to go ahead and donate, what you should do is give it specifically to other organizations where 100% of the funds is specifically going to go towards you know, the furthering the advancement of the black communities. And I
why
was
does
like,
that? Why does that annoy you so much? Is it annoy you because it annoys you because you think people are dumb? I mean, I hate to say all people, but is it the like how people are stupid thing for you?
No, it's the
Come
lack
on,
of.
Bruce. Come on.
No, I'll be honest.
Do you think most of humanity is stupid?
No, it's the lack of transparency and the fact that a veil is being pulled over a lot of people's eyes and they don't even know it. And it took someone like the head of BET to tell us this.
Right.
And a lot of people didn't know it or they didn't believe it.
All right, Bruce, final question. First, before I get your poll question answer, do you think, this is totally random, do you think you are smarter than most people on the planet? It's not a trick question.
Okay, sure. I'll go with that.
Yes, okay, good. Okay. I think that's probably true. Bruce is a smart dude.
Sorry. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate.
Are you saying you think you're smarter than most black people or something, Bruce? You're a racist. I'm kidding.
Well,
see, now just by joking like that, I'm going to get a mark on me. I'm going to be like I was whatever. You can't even joke anymore. So, and that's the problem, right? So our vote on blackface was, again, because it's a double standard. There is no question it's a double standard. You can say what you want. People who have been more liberal, who've done it and said, I did it just to depict a character. Again, I pointed out the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, did it not to depict a character. He did it in a picture from his college, and he's either the Ku Klux Klan guy, you can't see his face, or he's the guy in blackface next to him. So that wasn't even that was just plain outright racist, offensive. He's still the governor of Virginia. And he's a Democrat. Would he still be the governor of Virginia if he was a Republican? So there's a double standard. So our question was, is blackface, if you do blackface for any reason, but especially if you do it for a reason just to depict a personality, should you be automatically canceled no matter who you are? Or should you only be canceled if you're a conservative? Or should you never be canceled? Bruce, your vote was?
I was saying you should at least be able to talk about it without losing your job.
So that's a never be canceled without a conversation.
That's a little again. It's not all black and white. It's not all black and white.
Let's get some other comments, and if you have any responses from the poll, we got it up late. I just want to say I'm not being facetious when I say about liberals. There are people who have said to me, "No, the reason why it's different when Jimmy Kimmel does it is because Jimmy Kimmel doesn't have a history of racism, and Megyn Kelly, although she never did it." Some people say, I'm not saying she does, but she had a history of racism. So there is a view that's like, if you're conservative, somehow maybe you shouldn't get a pass. So it's not just a tongue-in-cheek question. It's sincere. I think there's people who'd be like, yeah, liberals get a pass. Did we get any responses in our late poll?
Well, we put it up too late, but I do have someone who wants to answer that specifically.
Okay.
Let me bring him on. Mohammed Ali, I'm going to bring you on. There you go. Go ahead and answer Rob's question. I'm heading out.
Good to see you, Mohammed.
Guys, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm watching. I'm listening to this story. Very interesting. So, yeah, I hear the question. So, if you're saying if somebody's conservative or Democrat or whatever, so they get into trouble if they talk about blackface. Is that
right?
Okay. So, like you said, you answered that yourself. I don't think this should be tied to politics at all, right? And if somebody has worked hard all their life to create problems for black people in America, who always fought against programs in government systems that help the poor, especially that affect policing and things related to black people, and they're doing it, that's definitely racism. But look at the difference. She's doing it in 2019. He did it in the 90s. People make mistakes. Here, I'm from Canada. My prime minister here is Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, he did. Justin Trudeau did blackface. Yeah. But Mohammed, here's my question. Why is that defensible? Again, I don't think everybody should get canceled for it. I don't think you should I think we should talk about it. But why does Justin Trudeau get a pass by simply saying, I shouldn't have done it? I'm sorry.
I don't think we got a pass. He got called on it, okay? People made a big deal out of it. It wasn't easy for him. He apologized. He came forward, just like Jimmy Kimmel did. But this happened again way back in the 90s, early 2000s, when people were not as sensitive as we are today. Just so
But
you
isn't that the point? That's sort of my point, is that we hold people accountable to a standard not our own, even with the cancel culture. I mean, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, I don't need to idolize those guys. Right. I don't care, but they did what they did. They're the basis for us being here. Right. You know, well, should we cancel them because they were racist 250 years ago? Maybe they wouldn't have been racist today. You know, I'm not saying their views were okay. I'm saying it's a different time.
Yeah, so people who are dead are dead. They're gone. We just don't want to talk about them. We want to talk about the ones who are living. And
okay, I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
Right?
I'll go with that.
So those who are still saying things today. So if somebody did this in the 90s, when, you know, it was in a context when he did it. If you look at my prime minister, he was a drama teacher when he did it. He did this for the parents. And when you look at the context, in his mind and understanding, he wasn't, you know, trying to be racist. Let's be honest.
Right.
But when Megyn Kelly comes every single day on air, attacking, you know, projects, programs, politics, you know, helping people in the future, definitely she was racist. Okay. But do I think she should have been fired? I don't think so.
Okay, but to my point, Mohammed, you do have a bias that Megyn Kelly, because she's more conservative and you think is more racist, she gets less room. Because Ralph Northam, the governor of Virginia, you know, he's a Democrat, and I don't know if you know the story, but the picture's there for people to see. It's in his college yearbook. It's not depicting, you know, a character or an actor or a famous person. It's literally a Ku Klux Klan guy and like a black slave person.
Right.
And he's one of them, which he's still never even been forced to admit which one he is. But either one would be like, that's all out racist. And he's still in power because the Democrats aren't going to push him out.
Again, I'm not for this cancel culture at all. I don't really believe in that. I believe that we're all humans. We make mistakes, but we need to be called out on it. Just like, you know, this guy right now here, Jimmy Kimmel, had to apologize, came forward, we call on it. But look at his actions throughout the last, you know, many years. We know Jimmy Kimmel. We don't know him as someone who's advocating for craziness. You know,
listen, I agree with you. Mohammed, I agree. Stay on the screen with us, Mohammed. Bruce, can we bring, we got Jim Stock there. Jim's a conservative guy. You know, Mohammed, you're more liberal. But Jim, I want to sort of turn this into a mini roundtable here. Jim, so you've been listening. Your thoughts, and I know you're not a fan of cancel culture either, but I know Jim thinks, I've talked to Jim enough to know you know, go ahead, you tell him what you think, Jim. I'm not going to speak for you.
How you doing, Mohammed?
Good. Good to see you, Jim.
Good. I appreciate your level rational ideas and thoughts. It's refreshing at best.
Thank you.
So, you know, I think mine are maybe a little bit different angle here, Mohammed. My concern with the whole cancel culture and all the political correctness is that all it really does in the end is allows our country to continue to avoid having to deal with the real issues that have to be addressed. So it makes us feel good. You know, we sort of put a Band-Aid on it. The idea, you know, that we can change a statue, change a, you know, whatever it might be, a name of a hall in a college, you remove a flag. None of that is going to address the real issues that need to be addressed. So all we're doing is kicking the can down the road to the point where when we finally do decide to address it, most likely it's going to be almost impossible, you know, to make any systemic change.
So, Jim, Mohammed, I'm going to guess you would actually agree with that cancel culture isn't accomplishing anything.
I don't think, I'm not for cancel culture at all. Yeah. We make mistakes. We learn from them. We move on with life. Of course, they need to apologize. They need to understand, you know, the context of what they're saying. It has to be taken in the context as well. But definitely not to, you know, kick someone out of their work. I don't think that's productive at all.
But Jim, and again, I know Jim. I've known Jim for a while, so I'm you know, whatever that thing is when you full disclosure. Jim, I know that you are a very conservative guy. I also know Jim has spent a lot of time working in and around, not necessarily inner city, but black communities, inner city, worked in, you know, ran a trailer park for a long time around lower income or impoverished communities. And Jim, you've had and done a lot also to work with kids and stuff, who are deserving. Jim, so I want to hear your thoughts because I know you have some pretty strong opinions about the whole thing and how you feel. You even said to me at one point, sometimes I think I look in the mirror and maybe, am I a racist? Because like, I don't line up with how everybody's thinking about this. You see it as kind of an extreme view.
Sure. I appreciate that, Rob. Yeah. So, Mohammed, I've had probably a little bit different career path and personal life from the average conservative, middle-aged guy. But in short, I ran an inner city 300-unit mobile home park for about 7 years, lived in the community, bullet holes in the side of my home, been pretty much almost run over, beat up, called a cracker. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word, but literally, daily. But it didn't really faze me because I enjoyed what I was doing. I thought I was trying to make, a difference. I started a barbecue restaurant with a buddy of mine who I'd met about a year earlier, who spent 18 years in a federal prison for murder. We were 50-50 partners. I've mentored, dozens of kids, coached inner city, football, not to make myself feel good. I enjoy doing it. Right. So what's hard for me as someone who's been probably more active in a disenfranchised African-American, poor community, whatever you want to call it, is I refuse to acknowledge what I'm supposed to acknowledge, white privilege, all lives matter versus Black lives matter. And by me just verbally either saying or not saying something, it's just incredible. I mean, we all know it, right? I mean, I immediately get labeled a racist. I'm part of the problem. So what I'm starting to tell all my liberal friends is like, screw you, tell me what you've done, and if everyone did, a quarter of what I've done, we wouldn't have this problem.
So Jim, is the question that and Mohammed, I want you to respond, but Jim, is the point you're making, I'm not going to say I have white privilege. You is that kind of where you're coming from? You're like, I'm not going to make the color privilege, because I've heard you say before, you're like, look, I'm not going to fall into this trap. You judge people on behavior and your view. You've even said like, I think sometimes these protests are out of line because people are like, look, you were a person who said early on, why didn't George Floyd just, if he didn't have a criminal background? And again, we've talked about that, but I want to kind of push that out because I think there's a lot of people who share Jim's view who are white.
No, I appreciate that. 2 nights ago, I had a long 2-hour dinner with 2 of my buddies, 2 college kids, Black kids that have been living with us and they're working for us. And we had very, very thoughtful discussion about this. And at the end, one of them asked me, they're like, Jim, are you willing to admit this, or do you feel this way? And I looked at him and I said, if I thought that it would do 1 iota of good, I would admit it. The problem is I believe the exact opposite, and I'm not going to do anything that contributes to the problem. And the problem is we're not solving the problem. And it's not using a straw.
Okay. So Mohammed, your responses to that as a Black guy listening to a white guy saying, I'm an admitted conservative, I am not going to admit to my white privilege because I don't think that's a valid framework.
Yeah. So, and I think, what, everybody has their own opinion, but if you look at the facts, at the figures, at the economic system in America, how it's built, the way, people inherit wealth, how it has been passed from generations down the line, well, definitely the facts speak for themselves. And it's not that I'm saying that we're not going to talk about the individual. We're talking about generally as a white race compared to the Black race. Of course, the white race is more privileged in terms of everything in America. And that's right. The history in which the country is rooted, which is slavery that led to Blacks being disadvantaged. And that's a fact. If you don't want to acknowledge that, that's fine. Because as an individual, maybe you came from, a different background, but still being white has its own privilege in America.
Okay, and let me,
Rob, can I?
Yeah, and I want to bring some other people on, so you get 10 seconds, Jim.
Okay, that's a quick question. So, Mohammed, my parting comment would be, obviously, I would not deny that it's a privilege and advantage to be white. It's a privilege or advantage to have a high IQ. I mean, lots of these things, right? My point is, every second that 2 rational, thoughtful guys like you and I waste talking about this is time we should be talking about how to actually solve the problem. And you and I both know the problem is not going to be solved by posting things on Instagram, blacking out our Facebook, removing statues, and all this other crap. So what we need to do is get beyond that, where guys like you and I can actually sit down and start solving the problems.
Well, and that's actually, I think, what we all kind of agree we need to be doing is having a conversation. You guys, thanks. You can stay on and whatever, we may jump you back up. We got other people who want to jump in. So let's get some other comments and people up and keep this conversation going. I got a black screen with a white dot.
Sure, Yan, you're up.
There he is.
There you go.
Okay.
Oh, you're muted right now, sir. There you go.
I should be online now. How are you?
What's your name?
My name is Jan.
Jan, hello. Your thoughts?
How are you?
Good,
good.
good.
My thoughts. So I am a liberal. I'm also a good friend of Jim, and he's trying to help me, and I'm trying to help him, or we're trying to help each other. So my thoughts.
So Jan, let me interrupt you for a second. And I'm going to try to speed it up because we have a lot of people. So I'm not asking you to rush.
Yeah.
I'm just going to. So as a liberal, you're self-identifying that way. You listen to Jim. You've said you're friends with him, so you've listened to him before. What is your gut reaction to the things he says?
So my gut reaction is that there is racism in this country, and it needs to keep getting better. And that the current political climate and everything that's gone on with everybody getting in the streets has certainly helped move that forward, move the needle. And Jim talks about stop posting on Facebook and those types of things. And I definitely agree with that. And I think that, although I'm not going to stop, but I think that people going down in the streets and letting their feelings heard is how the needle moves. What I was a little bit upset about is that you have an NFL player who took the knee, and his conversation about protesting against that, the black condition in this country got completely turned around the flag, disrespecting the flag, when he was protesting peacefully. And then now when people are down in the streets, and obviously that's causing, physical damage and those types of things. And now all of a sudden people are like, well, you can't do that either. So it's like, what do you want, people? Can we protest peacefully or not?
So Jan, let's talk about Colin for a second, and we'll bring more people into this. But so do you understand why people were upset that Colin Kaepernick was kneeling during the national anthem, or are you like, that's stupid? Like, I understand what Colin Kaepernick was actually protesting. I get it. I'm totally aware what he was trying to do. But people who said that's not the place to do it, not in front of the national anthem, because people in the flag, because people died for that flag. Your response to that?
I do understand that people have how they feel about the flag of this country, but at the same time, you have to have the ability to hear what is going on with other people around you. And when you see that happening, you cannot just, get on your high horse and say, oh my gosh, you are disrespecting the flag, and I don't care about, what your issues are. That's all I'm going to focus on. And then you have someone leading the country that is the main cheerleader of that dissent voice. And, and then here we are. So they push things down the road, and then you have a big explosion with Floyd, and people are on the street protesting.
Right.
So you want to keep pushing things down the road when
instead
of letting somebody take a knee?
And I get the value of protest, and I understand it. Hey, we have more people coming up, but Mohammed, are you still there? Mohammed, so you're from Canada, but you're also, a black guy. So, you're expressing a lot of what you said in your last comments about, look, there's a history of this. You can say what you want. These are the facts. Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee for that reason.
Right.
But a lot of people, and recently even Drew Brees, said, I don't support the taking a knee. And Drew Brees had to walk that back and say, I should have been okay with that. And my response is, you can be okay with wanting the protest and say, I don't think that's the appropriate way. And I guess Jan's point would be, well, which way is going to be appropriate? So as a black guy, not American, but you watched it from Canada, and you guys kind of are like our brothers up north and sisters. You kind of always look at us a little like, what are you guys doing? What was your reaction to Kaepernick and to people's reaction to it who were like, don't do it in front of the flag?
Well, definitely, and he was expressing his position on what he feels about, racism and what's happening in America, and it was just completely taken out of context. And it was everybody was getting mad, and that just shows that there's a lot of people out there who do not acknowledge what's happening in America in terms of racism, the over-policing of these people being kept in the prison. And we talked about the prison thing last time.
Yeah, we have the highest prison population in the world.
Exactly.
I've said, and I'll say it again, if for no other reason, you cannot make a society work when you are taking an entire generation of a large minority of our country, men, and incarcerating them and throwing their lives away. If you want to, we're all going to pay for that. So if you want to rebuild, you better figure out how to stop the mass incarceration. But that doesn't always mean, to me, the protests and a lot of white people doing their thing, they're not going to really make it change. It's symbolic. They're not going to give anything up to actually make life better for the millions of people who are impoverished and facing that uphill hurdle.
Actually, I don't have my statistics with me, but over the last 30 days, since the process started, there's a lot of laws and changes that happened. Okay. And because of these conversations we are having, a lot of people are being, enlightened. There's a lot of education going on right now. Many people like you, Mr. Jim, who was here before, of course, people who worked with, he said with the minorities, did all of this, but didn't understand how, he's privileged as a white person. And so when having this kind of conversations, probably down the road will lead to, a more understanding situation.
All right, and I want to bring another person up because we got a couple. Looks like we have at least one more person waiting in the queue. But I just want to say, Mohammed and Jan, again, Jan, I understand. And you're in Seattle, right, Jan?
Yes, I am.
Right. So you've got the CHOP thing, which just came down. I'm sorry, I don't see what CHOP was doing other than like, we're taking over a police precinct and let's get rid of the cops. And finally, the mayor was like, I can't take it anymore. Like after being like, it's fine, they just charged in and packed them all up. Like, how is that actually leading to constructive change? And I know Mohammed's saying, well, things are happening. I honestly, if you think defunding police departments is going to make that change, it's not. First of all, people want police, and we have a police culture that needs to change. So just taking money away so there's no gang prevention units is pretending there aren't gangs, which there are. Taking away money from special victims units like they're doing in New York, that's not going to solve problems. Changing a culture will solve problems, and that's a long-term process.
Yeah. Is that me or?
Go ahead, either one of you, and then let's bring someone else up with you guys.
Okay, so just to quickly respond to that, yeah. So, like you said, 1,000 of 1 mile starts with one step. And having, this annoying thing happen to the police themselves for the defunding, they don't like it, definitely will trigger some conversation that next time they probably will think about carefully before they do, they act like, random things that they're doing, like the guy, what he did to Jimmy, right, that Floyd guy, right? So this is my point is that, we need this happening now because it's the journey down for the future.
Right.
Yeah. So as far as
go ahead, go ahead.
Seattle, as far as being in Seattle, I have an insight into how the CHOP happened. Right. It happened organically, if you will. Over a 10-day period, they were protesters, and the police were stopping them a block away from their precinct. And every night it would end badly, meaning tear gas and those types of things. And then the next day, protester would show up again. And it lasted like that for 10 days. And eventually somebody decided, let's take, there's two chemicals that blow up, right? They react to each other. So let's take one of those chemicals away and it will diffuse the situation. And that's how CHOP became. Now, it's a symptom of this movement. So I didn't think it was going to last forever. I knew
But
that.
Jan did it, and Jan, you've been there, right? You went into the zone.
I did. I did.
What I just don't understand what it accomplished. And by the way, if Jim's still around, Jim, you can jump in because you guys know each other. We can have a battle of the middle-aged white dudes between you two. You know, I'm gonna send both of you to the gym first. I'm body shaming.
More like the heavyweight.
You need to look like Muhammad and me. Get in shape.
Right.
Gear up. No, come on. So, Jim, obviously, you think Chop is a joke.
Well, I would be more interested in what Muhammad's thoughts are, and I don't see their relation to the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean, to me, I think it's sort of the really angry, extreme left progressive.
Yeah. No, and Jim and Muhammad can weigh in, but I want you to weigh in because you are. I've heard you privately express your frustration with not the goal of the legitimate protesting, but of the riots, of the looting, of the stuff that just seems like you're the first person to say, what do people think when they say defund the police? Like, what the heck? Like, are you afraid to express that? Or do you feel like you're going to get like shamed if you bring it up now? Or are you just being like, politically correct about it?
Me?
Yeah.
Jim?
I'm not very politically correct.
So you obviously don't agree with defunding the police. You obviously don't agree with the rioting and the looting. You don't think it's justifiable.
Well, I agree with both of those. Two different issues. I think the issue with the defunding the police is it's just, no rational person is going to support that. Anyone that does, I wouldn't waste my time with that. That's pretty radical. But
people do, Jim. People do think it makes sense. You have whole city councils, $1 billion in New York's going. Los Angeles, a couple $100 million. I'm sure, Muhammad, you may or may not, but I'm sure you know people, I do, who think defunding the police is a good idea.
Well, yeah. So for me, I don't think it's a good idea to defund police if they are needed, but over-policing is what's not needed, especially if they are targeting only, like, you know what, I'll just give you an example of myself, okay? I lived in a neighborhood before, back in the day when I moved to Canada, where it's a little bit low-income area, and I didn't know the difference between these different countries as an immigrant who came from a country like Kenya, so I lived in this neighborhood where the police were there every single day, and every time I tried to drive, I used to get a ticket for no reason. Then I moved to an upscale neighborhood now, and I can tell you I did not get any ticket since 2012. Not that because my speed or my culture changed. It's just where I live is different right now.
Right. So Muhammad, let me ask you. So, because I meant to ask you that before. You obviously, as a black guy, believe you have been profiled by the cops. You're giving an example right there. You got stopped for being, I'm going to put the words in your mouth. You got stopped because you were black or not? Do you feel like you've had, and I don't mean mistreatment like you were like had guns pointed at you, but have you experienced, even as a Canadian in the U.S., have you experienced that kind of bias from the police?
Yeah, okay, so it's a little bit different. It may be that I may have made didn't signal turning right or left, right? Maybe it's not because I was black. It's because I live in a black neighborhood when this happened, and so there was over policing, unnecessary at every single corner. Police trying to look for something, whatever they're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I do right speed. Sometimes right now I turn into left, right without signaling right now, and didn't get any single ticket because I live in a rich white neighborhood right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so just having that experience for myself, I know what these people are feeling, and I can tell you another thing. My insurance is now almost half what I used to pay when I lived in that other
right.
place.
Right. Yeah. So quick question for you guys. Yeah. Each of you. Let me see your faces. Okay. Which would you rather, Muhammad?
Yeah.
In most cities in America, black or white driving in a car when you get pulled over by the cops? Would you rather, it's a hypothetical, would you rather be, if you were pulled over by the cops, would you rather be white or black in most cities in America?
I think based on what I know and what I hear from most Black Americans, I would rather be white to be pulled over by a cop in America.
Right. Jim, would you rather be black or white and pulled over by a cop?
I'd much rather be white.
Okay.
Than black.
And we lost Jan, but
he'd rather be white too.
Jan would rather be white too. And my point is, whatever we want to say, I think we all do acknowledge that there is some kind of weird dynamic that has gotten built into policing and minority communities. And I'm not saying it's a blatant racism. It's a built-in, maybe it's partly racism, but it's a built-in way that most minority communities feel they are treated by police officers. And it's a bad dynamic. Exactly. And that's why we would all rather be white in a car, because we think our chances are better.
Exactly. And that's what people talk about when they say systemic racism, right? It's not necessarily that the police officer feels that they have to be racist to do this, or they're not even aware they're being racist when they're doing these actions, because having, lived in a neighborhood, like I just told you, like in a Black neighborhood, with the officer 24/7 watching, all he's doing is his job. So you have much higher chance of being pulled over in a Black neighborhood, in a Black city, than being pulled over in a white neighborhood.
Last thing before I let you guys go, and this has been great, and I think we lost. We had a couple other people. Looks like some people fell out of the queue, but Jim, and I hope you're okay with me sharing this. I said it earlier. You made some comment to me about feeling like at times you wonder if you are a racist and don't know it. I don't want to say that's how you said it, but will you share what made you think that you again, you're not a racist. I know you, but why you would even had that thought in your head? Like, am I? Because it wasn't like the typical white liberal going, am I a racist? Because I've said it a million times. I know more white people who cross the street when they see a Black guy. And I'm a coach and I've worked, and I'll talk every Black guy I know. If they're a tall Black guy, I go, what happens when white people see you on the street? They cross the street. And I'm like, they have no idea you're a nice guy, whatever. So that to me is the systemic racism Muhammad's talking about. And I know lots of white liberals who lower their voice when they say the word Black. Like they're saying, when I was in this room, it's like Black people. And I'm like, why'd your voice just drop? Like, what's going on in your head? So I know that's not what you're referring to, Jim, but what part of you thinks that you could have, that you made you say that comment about racism, being a racist?
Sure, I can address that. I've sort of tried to reconcile in my own thought over probably the last 15 or 20 years the difference between being having a racist thought versus a prejudiced thought, and that's I can fairly successfully conclude that I have prejudice, right? So
why are you prejudiced?
So my definition of prejudice would give you a simple example. White guy, knocks on my door at 2 a.m. I see him walking up the driveway, and I open the door. A Black guy walks up my driveway at 2 a.m. With a wife beater shirt on and tattoos all over his body, etc. I don't open my door. So someone could say, well, that's obviously racist. I would say, no, it's prejudice, because if a Black guy in a suit walked up to me at 2 a.m, I would open the door. And if a white guy without a shirt on with tattoos all over his body, whatever, I wouldn't open the door. Right. But to even answer that question, you have to go through a fairly long explanation, and no one really wants to hear the explanation. They just want to label, me as a racist. So, constantly being extremely careful, but I want to make sure my own thought that I'm not a racist. The challenge for me is I've had so many interactions and through business and my personal life that it's difficult. I mean, I've employed well over 100 African-American individuals. And I'll tell you, you get sued a lot. It's difficult. No matter how hard you try, you feel like, and so at some point someone's like, well, why do you keep hiring Black people? I said, well, I keep hiring Black people because I like people. I like all people of all colors.
But what you're saying is you hire people, you found a higher incidence of getting sued by people who are Black. You found behaviors Black people were doing to you were different than behaviors white people were doing to you.
Well, and again, the reason I continue to do it is I sincerely love everybody. And
I know. I'm not judging. I'm saying your experience was.
when I get
Your
sued-
experience was behavioral patterns. Certain things were more common with the people you were working with who were black. Now, that may be because they were in a lower income community. It could be a million things, but that was your experience.
And Rob, you and I have had this conversation. It's, I believe, 98% class, not race. You know, it's just.
Well, I think, and that may make sense to you, Muhammad, in that you were saying you got in a worse neighborhood, you had a different experience than in a better neighborhood.
Exactly. So sometimes, yeah, I do understand, you know, the individual level, there could be different reasons why you want to do some things, why you don't want to do some things, why you may be afraid of some things. But the context is, yes, when I live now in a neighborhood that's more upscale right now, mostly whites living in the neighborhood, I honestly don't stop by police. I don't see police in the area, you know.
Interesting.
So sometimes
you guys, this has been really great. Bruce, you there?
Yeah, and we also have a caller, Juan, who's also black and from Texas. I think we should probably get his insights also.
Is he there?
Yeah.
Okay, Juan, jump in. Jump in, Juan. We'll take a couple extra minutes. Hello, Juan? Juan is just a black square.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can't see you. You're the black Instagram square.
I'll fix that. Okay. Okay, there you go.
There you are. All right.
How are you?
Good. Sorry, Juan. I saw you in the queue, but I thought you were gone, so I would have had you come up sooner. So you've been listening though to off and on.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I've just been out running and exercising and moving around. You guys have been having a good conversation about all these issues.
So where do you again, we don't have a ton of time, but where do you drop in sort of on the end of what we've been saying, which is, there's prejudice, there's systemic racism, just even starting with the first thing, have you experienced behaviors from white people or white police officers, but in general that you would say is kind of racist in your life?
2,000%. And here's the thing. It's, as you said, there's not a lot of time. And for us to thoroughly unpack this, there's layers. So I think the simplest way to summarize and sum up. Say it again.
No, you're there. Keep going.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, the simplest way to summarize this and put a capsule around it is the black man in America is like the rabid dog. Or just imagine if you and I were or I'll give you another example. Imagine if you and I was out at a campground having dinner, and all of a sudden there's this big grizzly bear that walks in, and we automatically assume that the bear's there to eat us, but the bear's only there to get water and get rest. So that's the black person in America. You already have an assumption of what they are, who they are, and what they're about without even knowing the person. And I think the whole thing about the statues being pulled down, about all the protests and all these things are things that need to take place and need to happen. We need to rip off the Band-Aid and change the dynamic of what's been in place for over 400 years.
So Juan, let me interrupt you just for a second because I want to keep this going. I see, Muhammad nodding. So two things you said there. One, the bear example in the woods, the rabid dog. So I get that, right? And that's to my point of like I can't tell, but look in the camera. You look like you're tall. Are you a pretty tall guy?
No, so I'm completely opposite. So I'm not 6'3", 300 pounds, threatening, but I have just had a recent experience in my local grocery store where I was followed, where I was profiled, just for what it happens to me a lot. My buying pattern.
So I get that. And look, that's your experience. And it's a lot of people's experience, I know, right? And it's my point that I was saying to Muhammad, I know the number of people who are like white people across the street. Like, and I'm like, I know people who do it. And I'm like, why are you afraid of that person? Like, did they give you bad energy? They're like just walking. So I get that. But to me, that's different than I don't understand how the kind of the tearing down statues and this whole kind of everybody saying I'm sorry for being white leads to any meaningful change in that way. Those same people who are going to apologize for being white and for their white privilege are going to cross the street when they see you.
So there's a couple layers there. The tearing down statues is, to me, ripping the Band-Aid off. That's changing what we see. So if you imagine, if you will, you have a person, a white person who acknowledges white privilege or not, make them 100% healthy. Middle-aged man, 100% healthy, doesn't need to go to the doctor. So then that person starts getting ailments and getting sick and wants to either exercise, take medicine, or go to the doctor. Well, that's all of what's happening with the statues and with the racism and all of the things. Think of it in those terms. So the statue is, whether a person wants to acknowledge white privilege or not, if they are 100% healthy, they'll never go talk to the doctor. They'll never look for a reason to change on what their current behavior is, because they're
Juan,
you don't know what you don't know.
Okay, what I'm saying, I want Muhammad and Jim, you guys can jump in. But Juan, what I'm trying to say is, I agree that there's a deeper problem. I don't understand how tearing down statues makes people feel good, which, by the way, again, forget about my point. I don't know where you stop. Like, you're going to literally have to tear everybody down because they all have racist past. But I don't understand how that changes the fundamental dynamic of what you want, which I agree with, which is the systemic inequality. I don't see how that changes by tearing down a statue.
Hold on, Rob. Not everyone has a racist past. Let me give you an example, because I had this conversation all week long. What about Abraham Lincoln, the guy who single-handedly started a movement in the United States to end slavery, but yet they're defacing monuments to him? I don't get that. Juan, I haven't talked to you in a little bit. Juan, help me explain that. Like, explain it to me like I'm a 2-year-old. I don't get it.
Well, all right, hold on. Before Juan answers that, Bruce, this is my point. Abraham Lincoln was not an abolitionist. It is a fact. You can look it up. Abraham Lincoln wrote letters, and you can read the letter where he said, I would keep slavery if it would keep the Union together. He wasn't a fan of slavery. He comments about black people being inferior. Yes, he met with Frederick Douglass. Yes, he tried. Yes, the Emancipation Proclamation, but he did it to save the Union. He didn't do it because he thought black people were white people's equals. And so that's why, if you want to go after it, because he was a racist for his time in a different way. He wasn't an abolitionist. The abolitionists lost to him. Governor Chase was an abolitionist. He couldn't beat Lincoln. Juan, Muhammad, you guys feel free to weigh in.
Okay, so the points Juan raised, there are two different theories in terms of justice and social justice, and trying to gain back some form of social equality, not equality, but equity. Equity is the distribution of resources equally among the people, whereas equality is impossible. God never created people equal. That's a completely different story. So the point he's trying to say is, there's this guy who was doing this two movements. One is very peaceful, don't do anything, don't create problems, try to demonstrate peacefully, ask. But guess what? For the last 6 years, didn't work. So when people try to take action, try to mess systems, try to burn businesses, to destroy things, this is called bringing the other side to the table. Why? Because the rich guy making all these rules and regulations and profiting from the big corporations that control the prisons, all that, will have to pay a lot of money to cover the insurance cost of the houses being burned down, the business being burned down, all that. So it touches the right people up there in power.
So Juan, hold that thought there, Jim. And I'm sorry, Muhammad, hold that thought. Juan, I want you to respond, but Jim, so now we're getting to the core of this, because what Muhammad is articulating is, and I had people say it to me at the protests, is there is a logic behind the violence and the looting, which is you don't pay attention you don't pay attention to peaceful stuff. You pay attention when shit goes bad. Jim, and Juan too, but Jim, because I know.
So here's the thing. So there's no. I'm not saying 100% of what's taking place is right, but I can give you an analogy. I've had a situation where my siblings, as 10-year-olds, my sister made me mad for 2 weeks. The next Monday, she made me mad again, and I hit or calling my brother, and I hit him real good. But he said, "Well, why did you hit me so hard?" I didn't hit him so hard because of that one little incident. He messed with me about that particular moment. I hit him hard for the whole week prior incidents. The whole week he's been messing with me. Right. So it wasn't that particular moment, but all he remembers, all he thinks about is that particular moment. So that's one element of it.
Juan, so let me pause you there. Jim, I want you to weigh in on that, because again, I understand that logic, but a lot of people go, yeah, but I didn't do this to you. So you're hitting me for something the guy next to me did.
Right.
My business, I'm not part of this. My business wasn't discriminating against you. I know, let's leave systemic racism out of it, because, I mean, yes, you could argue that everything's discriminatory. Jim, I know you have strong feelings about what they said.
So
you're being really quiet for a guy who gets so wound up.
I'm just so impressed with both of your callers. What's going through my mind right now is that if Juan and Muhammad and I sat down for an hour and we went into a horrible part of any inner city, big inner city, and we sat down with 4 or 5 families and we said, hey, we're all here to share ideas. We're all here to talk, and we're all here to figure out how to help each other and love each other and, raise more successful, people, and increase the chances of these young kids, having a seat at the table. I honestly don't think that small group of us would spend a whole lot of time talking about statues or any of this other stuff. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's a given that life sucks. It's a given that slavery was horrible. It's a given that life hasn't been fair. But when it comes to me, what I want to do is actually help somebody. So I want to get down to like the systemic issues here, the core issues, which is, okay, what do we do with, Mrs. Smith with 4 kids without a husband and without, what real changes can we make without waiting for the government to come in and just start throwing money around or having another program? Because clearly those haven't worked, right? The war on poverty hasn't worked. But I guarantee you, if the 3 of us guys, I mean, I'm happy to do it, and we can report back to Rob in a couple of weeks, but we could come up with a list of like real things. And here's what I always say: what we start with are the things we agree with. Everyone hates each other over the one thing that someone says that they don't agree with. We all should start with 1, 2, 3, 4 ideas that we all agree with. Start from there and then build up. And I think we would have something.
Interesting idea. Juan and Muhammad.
The only way. Okay, so Jim, I don't discount anything you said. I think that here's the thing. I love the diversity of the world. I like seeing red, green, brown, yellow, whatever. I think the only way things, in my opinion, will change is if we learn how to, or decide to work together financially in business and build wealth together and equally respect each other's minds and have proper seats at the table. As you were saying that, I was thinking about a thing and was probably not directly related to the conversation, the dialogue you were saying. But I remember watching several movies, where when slavery was ending, the first thing that was happening to the slave master and the woman in the household, his household, was they were concerned about their way of life ending. Their whole way that they have gotten income, their whole way of living, their day-to-day, their community, the tea time that the lady had. So that's the situation. Why there's always going to be racism. There's always just like in India, there's caste systems. It's the folks at the top, middle, and bottom that are trying to either get up, stay up, or keep someone down.
And so it's everybody. So you're saying it's everybody. If it happens, right, and if it happens in every class, so everyone is basically a part of it. Everyone is involving themselves in some way, shape, or form. Are you saying that that's I don't want to say that's leading us, but are you saying that in a way everyone is all involved with racism, systemic racism, in whatever way you want to call it, because it happens at every level?
So it's a part of it. So again, like, this conversation is layers. This is a big 4-layer cake, and you can pop in any area. But I think the biggest thing is, you know, when you have, and it's not just seat at the table, because if you have a board, say you have a $1 billion company and there's 6 people on the board and 3 of them are minorities and 3 of them are not, then in essence, you have equality with the board, but that's just that company. That's not the whole world. So I just go back to the movies that I watched when slavery was ending, and the family was concerned about things that, you know, the madam, or whatever you call her, not the slave master, but his wife, was concerned about how her tea party and her friends and all of these things, and not even thinking about the lives that are going to be freed, and
but
concerned about things.
Juan, and I understand that, but at the same time, that blanket gets put on every single white person who has somehow privilege, as we put it, benefited from a society built that way. And people resent being told, I mean, yes, right now people are willing to do it. I've said before, most people aren't being forced to really sacrifice their security, their job, their school, their future for someone else. And when people are asked to do that, most white people will be like, no, I ain't giving up my seat at the table, as you put it, for someone else. I want more people to get the seat, but not if it's my seat, right? So
and by the time you get 4 generations apart, it's not. So if I'm talking to Jim, say, Jim, you look about 40, 50. So, you know, I tell you look about 35, 40. I'll give you.
Wow,
so
Jim, compliments.
We're talking about 2 generations. So really, I can't be mad at Jim for 2 generations ago. So, but we're here now. So and that's the curious question. And I don't have an answer to that, but yeah. And that's what you were saying, right, Rob?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm saying, again, I get it, but it's sort of like you go back, you talk about the movies you used to watch, and I get it. That's a different time. And I think a lot of people go, yes, we still have systemic problems, but, Black people are in a much different place in America than they were. I mean, there are definitely mass impoverished communities, but I mean, overall, you can't say it's the same as it was in the 60s or the 50s or the 20s or 1875 when Dred Scott was passed by the Supreme Court and ruled Black people weren't full citizens. Like, we had and I'm not saying this like it's a token thing, but Barack Obama was president for 8 years. Now, I know that doesn't mean the whole world's different, but we couldn't have elected a Black president 25 years ago. Wouldn't have even happened.
But you need to understand what needs to be said and what needs to be understood is there are groups of individuals that, for whatever reason, are protecting the way of whiteness, the way of life, that are focused on whether it's Black, Mexican, Latino, Chinese, making sure that any melanated person is 2 steps behind. And some of those people are people in power.
Jim's rolling his eyes.
So,
maybe I misunderstood what you were trying to say. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are people like that, but I mean, I know hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of middle class, upper middle class, white guys. And I don't know one that's a racist. I don't know one that would fit what you just described. I'm not saying they're not out there, but in my world, which is where we just wake up in the morning and bust our ass like everyone else, like you and Muhammad, we're not racist. We're not trying to hold anybody down. In fact, you walk into my door right now, I'll hire anybody that I think is going to make my company more successful. That's going to make me money. I don't care how big you are, how tall you are, how short you are, what color you are, what language you speak. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about capitalism is you can't have capitalism both ways. It can't be the problem and the solution. If the capitalist is a greedy guy who only cares about profits, then the capitalist hires people that make him make profits. So you go to Amazon.
I'll tell you something, Jim.
Wait.
I'll tell you something, Jim.
Just one second. Who does Amazon hire? They don't hire the white guy. They don't hire the black guy. They don't hire the brown guy. They hire the Asian guy because he's smarter than us. But we don't scream and yell, but it's true, right? Are they capitalists? Are they racist? No. They're capitalists who want to make money, so they hire the smartest people.
Go ahead, Juan. Jump in. You wanted to say something.
So I was listening to the dialogue earlier, and thought ran through my mind. And I don't know if you realize, Jim, and I'm not calling you out by no means, so please take this respectively. But you gave an example about a person coming to your door. You said that the person that came to your door, a white guy came to your door. The example you gave is the white guy comes to your door and he's strange and scraggly or what have you. You're going to open the door. But then the black guy had a wife beater and tattoos. You automatically put the black guy, like he was toe down, and the white dude was way better. They both was raggedy, but you had the black guy worse off when he came to your door than the white guy. And that's an example of subconscious bias that folks don't realize, and also an example, in my opinion, of white privilege. Not pointing my finger at you, Jim, but I just noticed that when you were making that description.
And Juan, let me interrupt for a second, you guys, and we're going to wrap this up. This is great. Come back and do this again. We do this every week, but I just want to say, Juan, I think there is that bias in most people, but I would say two things. We don't get white people to confront that bias by shaming them. I'm not saying you're shaming Jim. I'm saying people have to be able to acknowledge it without having to then apologize for their lives. Secondly, black people do it too. I think everybody's a little tribal, and that's part of it you're not allowed to say. It's like black people do it too. I've seen black people be completely prejudiced toward white people. They're more comfortable with
black people are prejudiced toward black people. We got there's a saying called crabs in the bucket. So there's some dynamics to really fix this thing, the world. It's not going to happen in our generation or my kids' generation and their kids' generation. It's probably not going to happen no time soon.
Yeah,
it's just not.
Go ahead. Last words there. Go ahead, Mohammed.
To show Jim from the other side, because he gave the example of him opening the door for a white guy, but then if some rough guy who's black guy, he's not going to open the door. But if he came in a suit, he'll open it. So the fact that the other white guy, not from Jim's perspective, I want to go from the other white guys, who's coming rough, but he will open the door for him. That is a privilege for that other white guy. You see what I mean? It's not necessarily Jim has the privilege. It's that the fact that he gave the benefit of doubt to
the benefit of the doubt. Right. Yeah. Perfect.
Well, perfect. Yeah, and look, and Jim, you can get a thought on this, and I just want to say, and this is as Juan, there are so many layers to this. That goes back, for anybody watching, that goes back to an old theory, and I'm going to say this, and I want people to pause before they react, because I'm going to say it's called the good Negro, and I'm not saying that like, don't everybody get uptight that I use the word Negro, not you guys, I mean people listening, but it was the idea that a good black person is kind of respectable and dresses and looks and speaks like a good white person, and if you're not like that, you must inherently, so the black guy who looks and dresses and has short hair is accepted more than the guy who's got a huge afro. Which it kind of is what we're saying, that's built into our psyches, right?
That's right, exactly. I think Jim was supposed to respond, but
Jim seems. Can you hear us, Jim? He seems frozen on the screen. There you are. Your last thoughts, Jim. It looks like his feed is bouncing. See if we get his feedback in. But yeah, you know what I'm saying, you guys? Like that was that whole theory, right? That whole idea. And so Jim's reflecting that, but I think a lot of people have it, which is, I'm more comfortable with a black person who looks the way I view respectability.
Right.
And that's, I guess, what you're kind of saying is you get a pass if you've done that, and that's part of the, You know, I know a law professor at USC who intentionally grew out his afro, his huge afro, because he was like, I'm going to make a statement, but he gets treated differently. Even though he's a law professor at USC, when he has that afro, people treat him differently, like as if he's somehow more dangerous.
Exactly.
Muhammad made the perfect anti-point, or the opposite point, in terms of the definition of white privilege. It's the benefit of the doubt. So it's the guy that knows that he can go to the door, and 80%, 90% of the time, that help is going to be received. The door is going to be open. Whereas the black person, and the door could be however you want to envision it. It could be business economic opportunity, business opportunity, or in a state of emergency, or in a situation where there's plenty of examples on where liquor store owners call the police, and the police arrested the liquor store owners, and the actual robbers were getting away, and the people that were witnesses were trying to tell the police that it's not them, it's them. And it's the perfect comment, Muhammad. It's white privilege. It's automatically the benefit of the doubt and the ability to explain yourself and to have
And Juan, yes, and I want to, we can keep going on this, and I don't disagree that privilege exists. But what I'm saying is, on the other, there are always two sides to everything. White people may have that privilege, but at the same time, they are going to push back overall over time against being asked to accept it. Because of that, I'm responsible for all the bad things that happen to black people. And we are a nation built on it. I just want to say, when people get whatever, every single thing this country has was built on the backs of both on slavery and beyond that. You know, the Union General, right? I mean, you know, what did the Union Generals, we don't tear their statues down. Where did they head after the Civil War? They took over the West and wiped the Indians out, you know? So it's like we're built on the backs of that, all of us. And I'm just saying there's a point where we have to find a balance, because that privilege may exist, Juan, but there's only so far people will go to. Does that make sense to you? There's only so far people will go to.
Oh, 2,000%. I'll give you an example. I'll give an example of that from my side. I've been in the tech industry for over 20 years. At times, I would go into organizations being the only melanated person on staff. So I felt as a young tech person, whatever, the responsibility to make sure I did a good job, because if I didn't, then I almost representing other black folks, and they wouldn't get the opportunity to work at that company again. So that also happens from the black side, if you will.
Interesting.
Or from an African.
That's an interesting point.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because you have to yourself.
Go ahead, Mohammed. Last word, then I'm going to wrap it.
As a black person who's working in a business setting, in technology, in different sectors, you have to prove yourself actually 10 times harder than the white guy, because you also feel like, okay, if I fail, I'm going to prove them right, because they have this negative bias towards me. I don't want that. We keep pushing ourselves. That's a fact. And so,
and my intention of saying that, Rob, is primarily for the example you said, where we can't keep apologizing for the things that others have done. So it's the same. It happens to us as well. Yep. Like, why can't I go into the company and mess up? Because I'm not representing the other black person. I have my, I'm in this lane, and if I pass or fail, it's for me to do it, and it doesn't. I'm not representing you.
I get it.
I don't know you.
I get it. And you guys, this is why it gets complicated, because it's true in general. And, it's true. Women talk about this in women power organizations and that kind of thing, where it's like, I don't want to be seen as I'm succeeding as a woman in a man's world. I want to be seen as I'm succeeding because I'm as good as everybody else, not because I'm a woman. You guys want that same thing. I'm not doing well for a black guy. I'm doing well as a person in this industry. And you're getting that double standard judged on you. But the other side of that sword is, the more we make race the issue, the more that happens. So it's finding how we navigate this, right, guys? It's finding how we find a way through it that allows us to acknowledge those biases, change our viewpoints, but also move the ball forward so it's not always just about race. Because, because it becomes, do you see what I'm saying, Juan, before I lose you? Do you see
absolutely. And I think it's very important to remove unconscious bias.
Yeah. So the more we do that, the more
and I think that's what. Yeah, I think that's very important to remove unconscious bias. Yeah, remove unconscious bias, and I think the true leaders will realize.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say.
I think the true. Yeah, you want. Go ahead. The true leaders who embrace diversity are the real innovators.
Yeah,
because that's how you can truly innovate. Is have diverse mindsets. In fact, if anybody that's dealing with AI, artificial intelligence, you'll have a dirty data set if you don't have true variance and diversity in your data.
No, I agree, and I think that's true.
FYI.
And yeah, I'm into that. Exactly, that is right. And all I'm saying, there's no but to your comment. It's a separate comment. Is that the more we make everything about race, which we are right now, and I understand why, the reasons we're talking about, the more we risk race becoming the focus all the time anyway. In other words, the sad side of the trap is that white people get so uptight now about making sure they've owned their privilege and apologize for it, that they see color in even more dramatic terms. They notice every behavior they do to a black person, around a black person, in a black person's presence, with a hyper focus that now makes it like, just stop. You know what I'm saying? It's like there has to be a navigating through the middle of that, because otherwise it will become even more focused on just on color, not on character, right? Because you guys aren't arguing for focus on color. You're arguing for focus on equality, which has been disproportionately pushed negatively towards people of color. I think I got that right.
Yes. Yeah. All of that.
All of that. All right, you guys, listen, thank you so much. We got one Reddit comment here. We had a bunch of Reddit comments. I only got some of them. Bruce, you want to share what that person's saying?
Yeah, so Reddit user Atlas Romolino says, just now a black kid is wearing a do-rag, Jordans, and a hoodie, and a white kid is wearing the same. Who are you more likely to trust?
Well, I think that depends who you ask.
The white?
I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, Muhammad, Jan, Juan, we might all have, Bruce, we might have different answers to that, right? But I think what I'm getting at is we have to get to a point where we don't make the decision based on color.
That's right.
And that's where, even to the white liberal, when you cross the street because you see a black person who seems scary to you, are they really scary? Or are you just assuming that because of an external look? And that's a systemic bias that gets in people's heads. And you may mean well, but at a certain point, we have to move past the focus on color to be able to see it. That doesn't mean colored people or people of color or people of minority communities haven't been discriminated against because of their color. They have. But moving past it means moving to where we're not focused on color. Whereas Juan was saying, you're creating diversity, but you're not looking at Juan going, he's doing a good job because he's a black guy and he's proving for black people can do well in this tech space. It's not about his color. It's about who he is and what he brings to the table. And that's where I think that's the difference. I started out saying Groundhog Day. That's where we don't keep living Groundhog Day over and over again. That's where we wake up one day like Bill Murray did and we grow and realize we can do better.
Well, that's the reason for bringing down the statues, is to not relive Groundhog Day, change the canvas, and repaint and rebuild. That's the reason for the statues going down.
All right,
Ron, you're gonna get.
I'll let you have that, and I'm gonna go on the other side and say I understand. Again, I'm not defending all the statues, but I think you are a slippery slope because I don't think taking down the statues is really changing Groundhog Day. I think, and again, I don't care if you take down a bunch of Confederate guys' statues. That's fine. But I think that line becomes the thing people do over and over again. And as I said, you're going to have to take everybody's down because Kennedy was a racist. Roosevelt was a racist. Woodrow Wilson was a racist. Lincoln. Just
Where
about
does it end?
everyone.
Where does it end?
It doesn't end. And that's my only point, Juan. I'm just saying, I think we have, and again, we can pick this back up. We can do the statue thing, but I think at the end of the day, and I understand your view is no, it's necessary first step. It's a cleansing. And mine is, how do we get to the next step past the cleansing?
I'd much rather see those statues go down than lives lost, whatever color they are. So
yeah, so with the statues, it makes it. My understanding of it is that they embody a system. Okay, somebody got into a war to make sure that they didn't let black people be free. They wanted to be slaves, and then here you have the same people being symbolized, being glamorized, have their beautiful, nice statue, which you and I don't get. And when a child who's born here white passes by.
Okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. You guys listen, and we really are. We've gone so over our time, but I want you to think about this as we leave, because I get that. I understand what you're saying, okay? And all I'm saying is, where would you draw the line? Because by that standard, Muhammad, everybody's statue has to go on. It's not just the soldiers of the Confederacy. I'm going to say it again. John F. Kennedy was a racist. Anybody who pretends he wasn't, just go back and look at things he said and did. He wasn't like a racist, like a Ku Klux Klan racist, but he didn't want civil rights. Bobby pushed him to do it. Sergeant Shriver pushed him to do it. Lyndon Johnson was a blatant racist, So I'm saying all this, I just feel like, where would you draw the line? And maybe that's another conversation we have.
I'll answer that question with a question. Which statues inspire the Ku Klux, the KKK? Is it that of John F. Kennedy? Is it that of Abraham Lincoln? Or is it the ones that are being taken down?
And I think that's a great question, Muhammad, and I think it's a fair one. And I am not saying, going to be clear, I don't really care if we take down Confederate statues. But I think there is a point where we are turning into where we are trying to wash everything clean. And I don't know that you can truly unstain the fabric of what we've built. At a certain point, we may have to acknowledge the stains and do better.
That's right.
And that's where I want to leave it. Thank you guys so much for being part of this.
Jim wants to say something. Jim wants to say something.
Oh, hey, Rob, can you hear me?
I can. But you guys, listen, we're going to save it because we're way over our time.
That's cool.
So thank you all for being here. Come back next week. We'll do this again.
Thank you.
Okay?
Nice meeting you, Jim.
Watching. Jim, we'll keep this conversation going. We will keep you guys all linked up. We could go for hours. Exactly. Call each other. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. I just want a last thought again. This is a dialogue we need to have, okay? This kind of dialogue, start having it in your own community. Start having it with your friends. I'm going to make a suggestion. Go on Facebook to a group you don't like, support, or agree with, and get into their conversation and listen. Dialogue is going to make change. Dialogue will lead to change, and then change has to happen. Behavior has to change, not just dialogue. So that's where I want to leave it. Let's not do Groundhog Day over and over and over again. Let's actually kind of wake up one day and go, wow, we're doing things different. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of it. I'm Rob Nelson. It's Rob Nelson Live.